Wow, that's another great example. And it really underscores how challenging the role of being a therapist can be. And you certainly don't fit the stereotype of the therapist who is relatively passive and just nodding his head and saying, hmm. it, it sounds like in this kind of work, you need to be very active, very involved.
That is very true. You know, the first couple of years that I was a therapist working at a mental health center, I really didn't have the tools. I knew what I wanted to do, but I had no tools for doing it. And I was
Mm-hmm.
listening to my patients, but I had no idea what to do next. So I did a
Yeah.
lot of listening and a lot of supporting. And I just thought, you know what? You just chose the wrong profession. That's the problem here. You're just going to have to figure out, now that you got your MSW and you're working, you just, okay, you made a mistake. Maybe you can do administration or something like that. Maybe that'll feel better. But then I started really getting active in my training, getting myself trained up, and I started going to brief therapy trainings, and I went to family therapy trainings left and right. And then eventually I went to the Child Guidance Center in Philadelphia and studied with Salvador Minuchin. I was in his last training class at the Philadelphia Child Guidance Center, and worked for a month there. And then the Child Guidance Center people were coming out to the West Coast and doing trainings. And so I participated in those trainings. And then at the youth service agency that I was working at, eventually I left the mental health center, went to work at youth services. And we put in our own viewing mirror so that we could have supervision, and we would call into the therapist and talk about what's going on. The therapist could leave the room, go back at a consult, go back in, move in another direction. And then it became a very dynamic process. And now it's all about, how do you create change? How do you get outcomes? How do you get results? How do you help a family go from here to there? How do you take dysfunction and make it functional? How do you take mental distress and turn it into mental health? And so with that challenge, yes, it invited a much more strategic, a much more active therapeutic role. And then I became in love with my profession. Then I couldn't get enough of it. And then I became a real family therapy junkie at that point. And I just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, that's a great story because you were skirting therapist burnout, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then through your own initiative of seeking out more training and more supervision and so on, you were really able to turn that totally around and get totally enlightened